So I'm happy to present our today speakers, Su Tao, with a very interesting title. Please, you may start.
Okay, thank you, Natania, and thanks very much for Alex's invitation. Today, my topic is the evolution of plant diversity in central Tibet. Of course, this is a teamwork. As you see, I have listed several authors here, but our team is very big, and so I can't list all of them. But anyway, just if we go to Tibet to do field work in Tibet, it's really very hard work. So we need teamwork. As you know, the Tibetan plateau is very huge and it's very high in elevation. The average elevation is about 4,500 meters. So it's quite high. And how did it form during the Siluric? And what did the plant diversity involve? That's our study topics. And we have done a lot of work in recent decade to just there. And every year we go there to do field work and collect plant fossils. So today I'd like to introduce some our research progresses. Our research region is mainly in central Tibetan plateau. The central Tibetan plateau is along the Bangong-Lujiang suture, and there are several sedimentary basins, such as Bangor Basin, Lima Basin, and the Lumpla Basin. And there is just a very, very deep sediment in these basins. And so we collected fossils in these basins, and we found several very important Siluric floras in this region. And the photo in the right is the landscape for one of our fossil sites in Lumpla Basin. It's a very huge outcrop. And if you can, I don't know if you can see the cars in the upper part. There are several cars, vehicles. So you can imagine how big it is. Here is a video made by Zoen to show the present landscape of the central Tibetan plateau. In this region, there is no tree and very few people. Of course, just very few plants. And you see the landscape is quite different from many other regions around the world. In this region, actually, there have been some studies, pioneer studies or expeditions. One is just a famous fish fossil reported from the Lumpla Basin. That's 1980. And then there are also some international colleagues visited this region. This photo was taken by Peter Molnar in 1985. They did field work in this region, and it's really just unbelievable. How could they got access to this region? Just about 40 years ago. It's really very difficult to get access. And unfortunately, and maybe as some of you know, Peter Molnar passed away last year. Just really very sad news. For the central Tibetan plateau, it's a topical just very hot for geologists. And how did it form? Until now, it's still controversial. One idea is just a proto-Tibetan plateau. It means the central part of the plateau was formed by 40 to 35 million years old. So it's quite old, and then grow outwards. But some other colleagues proposed different ideas. Some colleagues use the modeling and proposed that the Tibetan plateau was less than 3,000 meters during the late Eocene. So it's quite different. They got a quite different result. Why just they have different conclusions? I think one very important reason is just they use different proxies, and they just as you know, each proxy has some advantage and disadvantage. But the other thing I think is just previously we consider the uplift of the Tibetan plateau as a whole, but until recently we know it's not it's not true. Different parts of the Tibetan plateau have different uplift histories. So our team has done a lot of work in this region. These are some group photos. You can see just it's really a teamwork, and we collected many plant fossils by just every year we go there and do field work. Until now, we found several very important fossil sites along the Bangong-Lujiang suture, which is located in central Tibetan plateau. From the map, you can see the spatial distribution of these fossil sites, and all of these fossil sites and the elevation of more than 4,000 meters. So it's really quite high. Here I'd like to introduce these fossil floras, just from older ones to younger ones. The oldest fossil flora is named Jianglang Flora. It's about 47 million years old in New Bao Formation. The present elevation is quite high, as you see. It's near 5,000 meters. So we needed to do field work very, very slowly. Until now, we have collected more than around 3,000 specimens from 5 layers, and we have classified them into 80 morphotypes. You can see there are some fruits and seeds and leaves, of course, and leaves are the most abundant, and even some flowers like a key in the plate. It's a flower. And the flora is quite rich in plant diversity. And you can see there are some ferns and a lot of angiosperms. Very interesting. We didn't find any conifers in this flora. Generally, there is no dominant species in this flora, but Fabaceae and Vermeaceae are just relatively abundant. Generally, the floristic components represent subtropical forest. Among these fossil species, there are some earliest fossil records in Asia, such as Elanthus, Inigia, and Ventinago. And we find a close floristic similarity between Jiangnan and Grand River floras. You can see the floras here is just Jiangnan flora, and even just is a long distance from Tibetan plateau to the North America, but they show very similar floristic components from the lower place. You can see the similarity. It's very similar, and like Lagocaps, Inigera, or Elanthus, or some others, they are the same. So very interesting. And we think just there should be some floristic connection between these two regions. According to our fossil records, we get the main conclusion that actually there are different patterns for the floristic exchange during the use between Tibetan plateau and between Tibetan region and some other regions around the world, just including originated in Tibet and into Tibet, out of Tibet, or just florist change between Africa and Tibetan region, and even just the close floristic correlation between India and Tibetan region. One example is Ventinago. This is from Jiangnan flora, and is the earliest fossil record around the world, as we know now, for this genus. So we think this group was originated in Tibet by the youth. There is another interesting group. It's Lagocaps. And you see this kind of fossil is very interesting, very special. They have two bigger wings, and it's very similar to Dipterocarp, but actually they are not a Dipterocarp by the structure. So it's extinct group. Until now, we don't know which family it belongs to. But anyway, according to the fossil records, we found this group may originate from North America and then spread to Tibetan region and to Europe. Another example is Elanthus. We found just a very early fossil record of Elanthus fruit in the Jiangnan flora. According to the fossil record, we think Atlantis was originated in Indian plate and then are accompanied by the collision between Indian and Eurasian plates. Atlantis spread into Tibetan region and then to other regions in the North Hemisphere. So what's the innovation at that time by the Flora? We reconstructed the paleo innovation with the clamp and ancestry. According to the result, an elevation of about 1,500 meters was reconstructed. So it was much lower than nowadays. The next flora is very close to the Jiangnan flora in Nunpla Basin. It's named Tao Su flora. It's about 39 million years old by radiometric dating. The Nunpla Basin is very famous in recent years because this region produces oil. So some geologists, many geologists, they have done a lot of geological investigation in this region. And then later, there are more and more geological research in this region because it's in the core area of the Tibetan plateau. So we found these fossils from the Tao Su section. From this photo taken by Zhou, you can see it's just you can imagine the dramatic geological activities occurred. So this is a very big anticline in Tao Su section. Without a zone, we can't realize just how large it is. And we found fossil sites just in this section. You'll see there are two sites, DY1 and DY2. There are also some vehicles in the lower left. Near DY2, you can see it's our vehicles are very small, and then you can see the anticline is very huge. In this fossil site, we found many interesting fossils, and one is palm fossil. Is very big. It's more than 1 meter in length. And there are also some leaves and fruits and even spiny fossils. I will introduce them one by one. One interesting fossil record is palm. As you know, palm grows mainly in tropical regions, like in Xishuangbanna, where I work. There are some palm fossils, palm plants, and we in our botanical garden we have grow a lot of palms, even palm species. But in the fossil site, you see it's very high and very cold. Even in summer, there is just some snow maybe. So it's very cold. But we found some palm fossils in this high and cold region. So we can we can just have direct impression that it was not quite high and should be warm during the native use. So we did a further study for the paleoinnovation. We, according to just a recent reference by Rich Gate, and we also have just have a lot of data from just the internet, and then we found the main factor to restrict the distribution of palms is the coldest month mean temperature. This value should be more than 5.2 degrees. So this parameter, this value is very important to constrain the paleoinnovation. We further use models to reconstruct to restrict the paleoinnovation. We use different. We use 13 scenarios and just to test which scenario just which topography fits the best with the climate requirement for palm. This just we cooperated with colleagues from Bristol, and then we found just only east to west mountains with only less than 2,600 meters fight well with the coldest mean month temperature requirement. Another interesting discovery is this spiny plants. During our field work, we found a lot of spiny plant fossils. Just we thought just we considered why there were so many spiny plants in this site. We did some study for that. On the left are the fossil sites. You can see nowadays just low trees and very few plant species can grow there. We have classified these spiny fossils to precool and so on. And there are 7 morphotypes in total. Meanwhile, we found a lot of herbaceous fossils in this layer. It means just there should be some grass or just herbaceous species in this flora. And very interesting, we also found a lot of phytoliths in this layer, and many of them, they are just grass phytoliths. And we found just the increase of grass phytoliths from the lower to upper part of the section. So it means the grass species increased through the yields. So nowadays we know just in the dense forest there should be very few grass just on the ground, but in the open woodlands there are a lot of grass species. So grass usually exist in the just open vegetation, not closed vegetation. We further use climate model together with the topography scenario and some other conditions to reconstruct or to model to stimulate the vegetation type. And we found just the woodland, the vegetation of woodland existed during the Eocene in central Tibetan plateau. So all together, then we can recognize why did there so many spiny plants during Eocene in central Tibetan plateau. We found just the pressure by just mammal feeding and the drying region, drying climate in this region together just stimulated or promoted the evolution of spiny plants in this region. So the vegetation transformation from closed forest to open woodland was formed during just by 39 million years old, which was just about 24 million years earlier than the similar condition in Africa. So the next younger flora is just Xishuangbanna flora. It's also in Nunpala Basin. This photo was taken by Zoan, and you can see the lower right. It's a river in central Tibetan plateau, and it's just the further part. You can see a lake. It's the largest lake, named Selingchuo in Xizang. So our fossil site is just near a very big lake, and the arrows show where our fossils are from. You can see in the flora there are just many leaves, just very small leaves. You can see the scale bar here, and just we didn't find big leaves in the very big leaves in this flora. It means just the environment should be dry. In this flora, we found some legume fruits. One is podocarpium. This taxa has a very rich fossil record in the North Hemisphere, and I think many of you are familiar with this group. But we found this just in central part of the Tibetan plateau. This is the first time to find it, and it's really in very good preservation. And according to our detailed morphological comparison and morphometric analysis, we found just it's a new species, and we name it Podocarpium tibeticum. And we use a model to stimulate the historical distribution of Podocarpium. And we found just the gradual decrease of the distribution range throughout the geological past for Podocarpium, which might due to the climate change. And there are some other interesting species. Among them, one group is Cannabacea. There are two general in this flora for Cannabacea, and one is cannabis. You can see it's the largest leaves in the flora, and it's very special with palmate leaves. And the other one is humulus. I think everyone is familiar with humulus because beer is produced mainly by humulus and barley. So this is the earliest fossil record of humulus around the world until now. So this is a very interesting fossil record, and we are still working on this fossil material, and hopefully we can tell some interesting story based on this specimen. If we say younger flora, until now we don't have enough macrofossil record. But anyway, according to pollen record, during the latest Oligocene to earliest Miocene, the central Tibetan plateau, the central Tibetan region was still not quite as high as nowadays. It's about around 3,000 meters in elevation, and quarkus and betuna were dominant. It means it's just it was cooler and cooler from Eocene to Oligocene and then to early Miocene. Well, plant fossils are, of course, are not the only evidence for the paleo elevation or paleo environment change. There are also some other fossils, especially fish, insect, and mammal fossils. All of them support the existence of central valley during the Paleogene and the early Miocene. So this hypothesis is also supported by recent study with isotope, and colleagues from just ITP in Beijing, just Professor Ding Lin's group, and just they just use isotope to calibrate the paleo elevation and the paleoclimate. And they also found the existence of central valley during the Paleogene. So until now, we can see this just complex topography existed in central Tibetan region, just by both biotic and abiotic evidence. So generally, the vegetation in central Tibet experienced the change from subtropical forest to open woodland during the from the Middle Eocene to late Eocene, and finally to the present Alpine middle, as shown just in the upper left. So here is the summary. The central only existed during the Paleogene, which is evidenced by recent discovery of plant fossils. And the plant species were rich and different from nowadays during the geological past. And the regional identification and the expansion of herbivorous mammals may have driven the diversification of functional spiny things in central Tibetan woodlands. And the uplift of the plant and the climate change caused the dramatic plant diversity change. Well, that's not the end, of course. There are still many interesting questions. I think some of them, I have listed some of them. And I think because the Tibetan plant is very huge and very interesting, and very important, of course, to study it. So we need more work in the future, just to understand how did the plant diversity respond to paleo environment change on this fascinating region. Okay, that's all. Thank you, and thanks very much for our international team.
Thank you, Tao, for the interesting and beautiful presentation. Does anybody have questions? Just raise the hand and pose it. Meantime, may I ask the first question: how it was to collect in Tibet? Was it so difficult at such a altitude?
Yes, I think Alexei can give you just some ideas, or Bob is here. Yeah. But anyway, just yes, it's a big challenge to collect fossils in this region because it's very high, and we are just always lack of oxygen, and most of our participants go there and have just high altitude sickness, and you will have headache and some others, just some problems anyway. And so every time if we go there, we need to prepare very carefully. And the first one is just you need to be healthy. Don't catch cold, or just your heart should be no problem. Then you can go there. And the second one is just no matter what you find, don't be so excited. Don't just jump or just run very fast. It's very dangerous also. You need to work very slowly and step by step. That's why just every year we go there just several times, just not once. And for each time we stay there just not quite long, usually just half, maybe 10 days or half a month. And then I think that's enough. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you. And we have several questions in the chat. Could you look in the chat?
Yeah, I see. Okay. What so Aaron said what yeah, and what are the main criteria we should take will make morphotypes? Yeah. Very good question. And for the morphotypes, we just of course we don't identify just to species level or just genus level. We just classify them based on their morphology. So usually just we classify them to different morphotypes by the leaf shape, like just they are just round, they are just elliptical or just some other shape. And we also check the marginal part. Just some leaves, they have teeth. Some are entire, so this is also important. And the other another character is just a leaf relation. We can see just for usually this character is stable in one species, so we can classify them to different morphotypes based on these characters, as I mentioned. Okay, so what your okay.
And there is one.
Oh, Nishida. Yeah. Hi, Nishida.
One more question.
So
Nishida.
his question is.
No, just.
Oh yeah, just a comment. Okay. So.
And also excellent talk is written by.
Yeah, can
Xishuangbanna.
we consider phylogeny as one of the critical makeup too? I think phylogeny is just a little further than morphological classification. If we use phylogeny, then we can combine both phylogeny and morphotype, or just the morphology. If we can, if we identify them, just to study the evolution of plants. So it's just for morphotypes, just I think it's mainly for climate, or just to reconstruct a paleoclimate. If we want to study further to understand the floristic components, then we can just study, we can classify the morphotypes and identify them until genus or even just a species name. Yeah.
Thank you. Other questions? Svetlana, switch on your microphone.
Hi, Tao. I'm sorry I couldn't find the hand here to.
Okay.
Nice to see you here, and thank you very much for very nice talk, for great job which was done by your team. It's really nice and really useful. My question is, did you try to extract pollen from the samples you collect, from the same samples, macrofossils you collect?
Yeah, thank you, Nana. And actually, yes, we have tried the pollen and palynological analysis, but unfortunately, we didn't find a lot. And in most layers, they are in very poor preservation because of the dramatic geological activities. And if you remember, just I showed the very big anticline.
Yeah,
it's very big. So you can imagine how dramatic for the geological activities occurred on the plateau. That's why I didn't show just the many pollen analysis or study. But anyway, just very good suggestion. We are trying to find more pollen. Yeah.
Yes, just because of the preservation of macrofossil is just excellent, especially some leaves and fruits with thin structure, and that's why I thought maybe.
Yeah. But they are different preservation conditions. Just in central Tibetan plateau, you see the macrofossils are really very nice.
Yeah.
Just well preserved. But just in many layers, they are just because of the dramatic activities, they were burnt. They were formed by high temperature. So we can say just for macrofossils, all of them, they are just the only impression, low cortical. So they were just burnt, So in this condition, it's impossible or very difficult for pollen or just spores to be preserved.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah, could I just add something to that? Some of the chemistry of some of these lakes was quite alkaline, and it varies enormously from place to place. So some of the pollen doesn't survive due to the chemistry of the sediments, but the leaf fossils, they are deposited, as you can see, in moderately fine-grained lake sediments, the best ones. And these, unfortunately, are where we tend to get some alkaline conditions.
Thank you. Well, may I ask one more question? Did you generate any hypothesis about why gymnosperms were absent?
Yeah, it's it's a very interesting question, and actually just during the Paleogene, not only conifers, but also just many modern plant groups we didn't find in these just Paleogene floras in central Tibetan plateau. They just the total just floristic assemblage is very different from vegetation nearby nowadays, from modern vegetation, I mean. So it means they are just ancient floras, ancient floristic components. They are just modernized. I think just why there was no conifer, just for macrofossils, just maybe it just in central, at that time it's just the central valley. It's in no elevation and it's just relatively warm. And you can see just we found some palm fossils. It's warm. And like in Xishuangbanna here in tropical region, there are very few conifers. They grow in mountain regions in tropical region. Maybe there were some, but they grew in just higher elevations nearby. So it's difficult for them to be preserved. But if we check pollen record, maybe we can find some. Yeah.
Thank you. Luns,
Okay, so
I see you have a question.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Tao, for this nice presentation and for telling us something about this very interesting topic. At the beginning, when you talked about the geological background, you told us that some basins, or maybe the Lumbula Basin itself, has an infilling of 4 kilometers of sediments.
Yeah.
Is there anything known about the age of the basal layers? So what could be potentially the oldest flora that could be expected from central Tibet?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Lutz. Yeah, it's a very, very long sediments in central Tibetan plateau. And actually, the oldest sediment is named the New Bow Formation, just from the Paleocene to Eocene. And most parts of the New Bow Formation was just over just red sandstone, and we could not find any plant fossils and in these red sandstone layers until now. So just as I showed to you, just for the Jianglang flora, it's just the oldest flora in the oldest cellulosic flora in central Tibetan plateau, and just to our knowledge now. But anyway, just yeah, there should be some just older flora if they are there. Yeah, I think there should be some older flora because the central valley existed for just a very long time, and if the climate was just warm and humid, maybe there should be some fossil floras preserved. But yeah, we need more time, and it's yeah, it's possible. Yeah.
Thank you.
Bob.
Yeah, could I just add to that again? The sequences in the eastern Tibet, they run from Paleocene all the way through to Miocene, and the Paleocene and early Eocene are all Aeolian dune systems, so it's a desert in that region. And as you go, we've done quite a lot of work on the paleo elevation. The elevation was around 600 meters in the early part of the succession. And then these deserts disappear as eastern Tibet rises, and the atmospheric dynamics change quite markedly. And then there are a whole series of floras going through the Cenozoic in eastern Tibet, which is basically just an extrusion of central Tibet. But I would predict that if you wanted to find Paleocene floras, they're most likely to be found in western central Tibet, because the climate models we've been using suggest that a lot of moisture was coming from the west. And so the western end of that valley will be more moist and less desert conditions. But that's just a prediction at the moment.
Yeah. Hi, Lutz.
Yeah, thank you for this additional remarks, Bob. May I have another question? Tao, you did not mention that there could be also a change of this area in paleo latitude. You just talked about altitudinal change. Is there anything known that this area was more to the south in the Eocene or Paleocene?
Yeah, actually, in our models, we considered this factor. Yes, it was just more south in the geological past, but maybe just during the Eocene, it's just maybe 10 degrees just lower than our days. Yeah, right, Bob?
Yeah, it's in that order. It's a little bit controversial because some of the existing paleo latitudinal data in the literature did not correct for sedimentary compaction in looking at the inclination. And more recent work has shown what the actual values are, but it's 10 degrees or less. Is the latitudinal offset, but I can't remember the exact numbers right now. There's around a 5-degree uncertainty on these things anyway, so, but it's not huge. We do correct for that when we use clamp analysis, for example, in trying to locate sea level moist enthalpy. We have to do those corrections, but there's always a degree of uncertainty because the paleomag is not exact.
Thank you.
Alexei?
Yes, just a question about the oldest flora you were talking about. Is it the Jianglang flora?
Yeah.
And you believe that this flora is quite similar with the American Green River flora, right?
Yeah.
Do you suppose any floristic exchange between these floras? And if yes, how was it possible for this very long distance?
Yeah, that's our hypothesis. Just when we check the fossil records around the world, we found it's very just interesting for this phenomena. And I visited Gainesville just in Steve's lab just to check the fossil specimens in Green River, from Green River. So it's these are just photos are from their collection, Green River fossils. So I think just until now, nowadays we know just the East Asia, the very close floristic correlation between East Asia and North America, especially the western part of eastern part of the of North America, and this is just. But how did it form until now? Just well, for molecular, based on molecular phylogeny, the CO is formed just quite recent. But according to the fossil records, you'll see they have very close floristic correlation just in much older geological past. We think just maybe the burning land bridge, or I don't know if just how important it was during that time. Just I see it's old, it's very old age. Just the burning land bridge. Just I'm wondering if it existed at that time, and just if it existed, there should be some more fossil records in Russia. I don't know, Alexei or some other colleagues from Russia, do you find some floras in similar age and show very similar floristic assemblages, like Jiangnan and the Green River floras? Yeah, I don't know.
No.
No?
Yeah, I can say that we have Eocene pollen in Alaska, and there's no indication that it was an amazingly biodiverse region that would be demanded by the number of paleobotanists who use the Bering Land Bridge as an explanation for floristic exchange. Most plant taxa in the world, including the tropics, have at one time or another been interpreted as going through the Bering Land Bridge. And if that was the case, then the Alaskan and northeastern Russian fossil floras should be absolutely amazing. But like Alexei says, there's in Russia there's not much evidence, and unfortunately the Eocene of northern Alaska is limited to pollen. I don't know of any good plant fossil localities, megafossil localities. But it should be there. They should be there in the pollen record, and as far as I'm aware, nobody has been bouncing up and down saying, "Hey, look, I got all these tropical taxa." So,
yeah.
But for people younger than me, they should go to Alaska and start digging.
And
so Bob, you
also.
need to introduce your experience to be there, just and together with Alexei, how could you go there?
Wrap up warm.
Share your idea, your experience. But anyway, yeah, I think Alexei gave a very interesting just question. I think it remains unresolved. Just why there is just a high similarity between Jiangnan flora and the Green River flora, and even just in Europe, we found just it's also similar to just the flora in basal. I think Lutz knows more for that. Just yeah. Why just in these different regions we found a similar floristic components?
I mean the connection to what is nowadays Central Europe is when you have these lots of islands in the Tethys area that the vegetation may have used to migrate between Europe and what is nowadays East Asia, Southeast Asia, or in the opposite direction. But this question could be better answered by Steve Manchester about the the modern interpretation of the messel flora based on diaspores. There are similar taxa, and messel is also quite similar in this quite rare abundance of conifers. As far as I know, there are only 2 or 3 conifers known from messel. There are palms, there are a lot of legumes, but there is also a lot of taxa that are that are known, but the affiliation is not known. There are about 60 or 70 taxa that are quite nicely preserved, but the affiliation to the family is still unknown. So that was investigated about 10 years ago by Steve Manchester, Margaret Collinson, and Volker Wilde. So there is much work to do before you can really compare these floras on a genus level.
Yeah. We found this, actually we found the Jianglang flora just, let me see, 6 years ago. And just this is totally new for paleobotanists. So why just the floristic components are very similar in the North Hemisphere and that time? How could they just separate? It's we needed to do more work.
Yeah, definitely. It is a more general question, not just about this flora, but which is similar to the Green River. It's about the floras of this age in Northern Hemisphere. You are right.
Yeah.
Well, more questions to our speaker. I see. Vasilisa, could you switch on your phone microphone?
Hello. So I have one question, a little bit similar to Alexei Hemmings about migrations. So in the early Middle Eocene, we see, along with the formation of new taxa, their active migrations. What with it can be connected maybe with the climate changes or some different causes, maybe something like potential properties of taxa themselves. So what do you think?
So you mean why what's the main factors driving the floristic change?
Yes.
That's just because of the I think the main reason is the growth of the Tibetan plateau, and in the geological past, the central part of the Tibetan plateau, I mean the topography, it was very complex, and we think there should be a central valley existed in central Tibetan plateau, in central Tibetan region, and accomplished by the the collision between Indian and Eurasian plates. You see, this geological activity still occurs even nowadays, and then just the central part of the Tibetan plateau, the central Tibetan region grew just higher and higher, and just the sediments just accumulated and then just the central Tibetan region grew, and the elevation, paleo elevation was higher and higher, and then climate should be cooler and cooler. And there are also some other regions, such as the retreat of Thetis, the ocean, from, as Bob said, just from the western side, then just the climate should be drier. And during the Neogene, because of the uplift of the Himalaya in the southern part of the Tibetan plateau, then just the Himalaya just stopped most moisture from the Indian Ocean, and then just the central Tibetan plateau, central Tibetan region was then just drier and drier, and we can see the dramatic floristic change throughout the geological past, and which was evidenced by our fossil record. Yeah, very dramatic floristic change. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
More questions? Alexei?
Just not a question, just would like to say that I would agree with Tao that it is quite difficult to work in Tibet because of the altitude. But it's a beautiful country. It's very nice country, very interesting flora, and hospitality of Tibetan people is amazing. So it's very nice to be there and to collect plant fossils there. And thank you, Tao, for your very interesting talk today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Alexei. Hopefully we can go together again in the near future in Tibet, in Xizang.
Yeah, it would be great.
Yeah.
Any more questions? Perhaps it's time to say thanks. Thank you, Tao, for the brilliant talk and for answers. And thank you, everybody, for coming and participating. Well, if no.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you. Nice. I just want to say hello and good to see you all. Thank you.
Oh, you see that.
Thank you and bye.
See you later. We'll see you soon.
See you.
Oh yeah. Sooner or later. Okay.
Someday.
Yes.